Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the local campaign. For the next hour, your chance to question the candidates from Eglinton Lawrence. Here's a quick view of the riding itself. Eglinton Lawrence is bordered on the north by Highway 401, on the south by Eglinton Avenue, on the west by the CN rail line, and on the east by Yonge Street. Let's meet the candidates now, and we will meet them in alphabetical order. Mike Cole, the Liberal Party candidate. Gertie Dervishi, the New Democratic Party candidate. Josh Rackless, the Green Party candidate. And Rocco Rossi, the Progressive Conservative Party candidate. Also running in the riding, Christian Bruckelman from the Libertarian Party and Michael Bone from the Freedom Party of Ontario. Our question, of course, for you this evening is, what is your question for the candidates of Eglinton Lawrence? You give us a call right now at 416-446-7090. Send your email questions to torontovotes@rogerstv.com and we will pass them along as well. Please observe this one rule. If you don't call, if you volunteer or work for any candidate in this election campaign, thereby giving mere mortal voters a chance to ask all the questions, at least for the next hour. Time now for opening statements from each of the candidates. Let's hear from Mike Cole.
Thank you, Dale. I just want to say that I'm very proud to have represented the riding of Eglinton Lawrence the last 16 years. Incredible people, incredible institutions like Baycrest, Villa Colombo, great public schools like John Ross Robertson, Dante Alighieri, and I want to work hard to keep protecting these good schools, these good hospitals, these strong neighborhoods that we have, the small businesses in Eglinton Lawrence, especially in light of what's happening in the City of Toronto. People are telling me loud and strong, we've got to protect our public libraries. We want good public schools, and we need that Eglinton LRT crosstown built once and for all. We got to build the transit. That's what they're telling me, and that's what I'm going to do if I'm reelected.
All right, thank you very much. And the next candidate, Gertie Dervishi.
Hi, my name is Gertie Dervishi. I'm the NDP candidate for the upcoming elections in Eglinton Lawrence riding. I have an engineering degree. I just want to make myself, or represent myself. I have an engineering degree from University of Ottawa and an MBA from Ryerson University. I believe these elections are very important for everyone. We're talking about affordability. We've seen life, the standards decline, and we're talking about services that we owe to people like transportation, healthcare, taxes, green energy, and jobs. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And the next candidate, Josh Rackless.
Hi, I'm Josh Rackless, and you're probably thinking, oh, the Green Party, those guys just want to save the world. I've got my own concerns, I'm selfish, I've got things I need to deal with. But I want to tell you that I'm selfish too, and that is why I'm running for the Green Party. One of my selfish needs is that I want to live forever. I take crazy vitamins, and that's why I support the Green Party, because we're going to reduce pollution that'll help you live longer. If you want to live longer too, you can be selfish and vote for me. I also don't like getting sick, and the Green Party wants to focus on health prevention, not just illness prevention. And thus, you can stay out of the hospitals and save the hospitals money and also not be sick. And then finally, I don't like wasting money. I prefer to have my money instead of waste it on taxes, and that's why I support the Green Party's plan to eliminate the deficit in a couple of years, to reduce income taxes, and to save money by making us more energy efficient and saving money on healthcare by preventing illness. So if you want to be selfish too, like me, you can vote for the Green Party.
Thank you very much. And the next candidate, Rocco Rossi.
My name is Rocco Rossi. I'm proud to be the Progressive Conservative candidate in the riding of Eglinton Lawrence. I've had the great privilege of talking to literally thousands of residents in the riding over the last several months, and there are just too many examples of people who are paying more and getting less under the Liberal government. Whether it's a senior on Playfair who's now looking to sell their home because they can't meet the bills, or whether it's a 26-year-old South Asian woman who just recently graduated with a PhD in biochemistry from the University of Toronto, having to look to the US for a career, or whether it's a disabled senior who's in the second year of waiting for long-term care. This despite the fact that taxes have gone up 4 times faster than family income, 10 times faster than pensions under the McGuinty government. We have to root out the waste, we have to give people relief, and we have to manage the money better so that you can have the future you deserve.
Thank you all very much for those opening thoughts. I'm sure when you go throughout the riding, knocking on doors, you hear about the economic situation, you hear about jobs. We don't have enough jobs to go around in the province of Ontario. I'd like to hear from each of you how you would change that situation. Gertie, let me start with you.
Yes, jobs is a big concern for people in the riding, and actually just this afternoon before I came here, I had a constituent call me, and her concern was that she was unemployed and she had temporary jobs for about 8 years now.
Yeah.
We've seen this over the past years. We've seen a decline in job quality, not only the number of jobs, and how we intend to fix it. Instead of the billions and billions of dollars that actually the taxpayers have committed in creating those jobs that have been given away to companies and corporations, but with little to no effect, we want to tie that to a specific metric. What we want to do is, if you're going to get a tax cut, then you have to create a job. And we believe that this would be a better way in using money from taxpayers to create those jobs. In the past, we've seen the deficit blow out of proportion as a consequence of this trickle-down economics that believes in the notion that if we give money to the rich people, then somehow that would flow down to the poor. Well, it hasn't worked. We have a lot of evidence, even in the United States, which is our neighbor to the south. So how about we do something different? I believe that tough times require innovative thinking to create those jobs, to make life more affordable for people.
Mike Cole, what about the whole issue of creating jobs and what can be done to enhance employment a bit?
Well, the critical thing is that government has to be a strong partner in investing in a city like Toronto. And that's why we are investing over $10 billion in building a commitment to the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. It's going to create work for 10 years. Not only will that improve transit, but it
Do we know how many jobs that will create? Have you ever heard the number?
The number is about 50,000 over that 10-year period.
Over the whole time?
Yeah, over the whole time. So those are real well-paying jobs. And then on top of that, we've got to build our infrastructure, like our hospital. We're building a new hospital at Keele and Wilson. It's going to be Toronto's largest hospital. So not only are there construction jobs, engineering jobs, but then once those transit systems or hospitals are built, you also employ people, because especially the hospital sector now, in the city of Hamilton, for instance, is one of the largest employers, and it's getting to be the health sciences sector in Toronto is one of the largest employers. So that's the innovative economy, the health economy, but you got to invest, and the provincial government in Ontario has really been very aggressive in that, and we've got to continue to be aggressive in investing.
Rocco Rossi, what about that? How do we create jobs? How do we get more jobs into the economy?
Well, I think the interesting contrast is the job examples that my Liberal competitor talked about are all about government creating jobs. And the reality is, long term, the economy has to create the jobs, not government, because those are the ones that are going to be sustainable, that's competitive, that's what's putting food on the table. And we believe very strongly that it is the economy that creates jobs, and we want to stimulate that by, one, reducing the corporate tax rate down to 10%, make sure that they have money to invest. Two, give tax relief to average Ontario consumers, because if they have more money in their pocket, they have more to spend. That's into local shops, and that's into businesses that are creating jobs locally and throughout the economy. We also want to make sure that red tape is reduced. There are so many businesses in the riding talking to me about how much time they have to spend filling out forms instead of going out there and getting their next customer or servicing their next customer. And then there are all kinds of rules that have been put into place that make it highly restrictive for people to get jobs. A perfect example is the current rule that requires 3 journeymen on any union-based site for every apprentice. And this is ridiculous because it's restricting the ability of people to get into good-paying construction jobs. If we, as we're suggesting in Changebook, our platform, our vision for the future, if we change that to a 1-to-1, you create 200,000 opportunities for skills training in the construction sector.
Okay.
And it also reduces cost.
All right. Josh Rackless, what about this? What about the thorny problem of creating jobs, or at least fostering the right conditions for jobs to grow?
Well, the Green Party talks about creating jobs for a 21st century economy. We got to look at the way things are going. The environment's in bad shape. We need to create jobs that are in the green technology fields. You know, McGuinty did a good thing. He brought in Samsung to help us create green energy technology. But why don't we have the people trained here in our province who can create this kind of thing? Why are we sort of bringing in other countries? And at the same time, the Green Party believes in supporting education, increasing training for the kids who are up and coming and going to be our future workforce. And a few of the same things Mr. Rossi just said. Reducing red tape. Green Party would specifically focus on reducing red tape for small and medium-sized businesses because we believe in the power of communities and building up from within. And also reducing income taxes for people and for small businesses, and putting a small extra tax on things that we don't want, such as waste and pollution, which encourages and gives incentives to businesses to become more efficient. And then we can compete more on the global stage.
Can we talk a bit about the notion before we move on from jobs? And Rocco Rossi, I'll come back to you on this. The many studies that I read that seem to suggest that when you give corporations a tax break, they don't necessarily turn around and create jobs, they keep the money.
Well, the reality
it may
is
not necessarily be a connection between the two.
there may not necessarily always be a connection, but overall the trend shows that when you have a lower tax environment, you have a more vibrant economy. The alternative is that you tax them more and then you create phony jobs. My colleague here mentioned the issue of Samsung. Here's a perfect example. This company, in a secret deal that was single source, no other competitors were allowed to bid for the work, have a contract that's going to pay them roughly $1.1 billion a year for the next 20 years in subsidies, in exchange for what is in that contract in Section 8.5, 900 full-time jobs. That's what the Liberal government believes job creation is about, paying $1.1 million per subsidized job. That's ludicrous. If we were able to have that money in the general economy, we would produce way more than 900 jobs. So that's
Okay,
what we're
all right.
talking about.
Let me come to you, Mike Cole, on that notion.
Well, it's just utter nonsense that tax cuts create jobs, because what happens is that, these
Well,
corporations...
your government cut the taxes too,
but we did a very focused on a capital tax. We did a very focused on
right.
personal income tax. But this notion about trickle-down economics, tax cuts creates jobs, well, Ireland tried that. They had the lowest tax rate in the EU, and you see what happened in Ireland. In fact, everybody then moved to Estonia because they had a lower rate in Estonia. Corporations don't have any loyalty to any country, and they'll go wherever they can get the lowest tax rate. So we have to basically have a government that basically nurtures invention, all kinds of initiatives that basically do innovation in many areas, because the private sector, they're more interested in making that dollar, and they're off to Mexico before you can say anything. So we have to basically nurture industry here in Ontario, and government has a role to play in that.
You want to counter Rocco Rossi's arguments about the Samsung deal.
Well,
You want to talk about
here
that
it
for
is.
a minute?
I mean, the Samsung company is one of the world's most respected companies. It has some of the most sophisticated technology in the new clean energy field. They were essentially interested in investing in Ontario with their technology. They're putting in hundreds of millions of dollars investment in Ontario with their technology, so that Ontario jobs could be created here in providing for new solar panels, the new clean energy industry. So we invite Siemens to come here, General Motors to come in here. What is wrong with inviting Samsung to come here and partner with us in clean energy? What's wrong with them?
Well, the notion is it creates Rocco Rossi's figure
His
was
figures
900
are totally
jobs.
wrong.
It's in the contract.
It's
Okay.
totally wrong, because this is like some kind of witch hunt against a company because they happen to be from Korea. I mean, we invite companies from all over the world to come to Ontario. As long as they bring their money and as long as they invest here, we welcome them here in Ontario.
Okay, let me hear some other opinions on this.
Yeah,
Gertie,
I'd like
what do
to
you
add
think
to
of this?
that. Yes, I agree that no strings attached tax cuts do not provide jobs necessarily. But I'd like to add to that
Necessarily,
that if you believe that tax cuts don't provide jobs? Why is the Liberal government have been doing this in the past, and it's committing to further cutting tax for corporations if they actually form government again in October? So why we're doing this with so much evidence, and you are convinced that this doesn't create jobs, why are we supporting this practice then?
Josh Rackless, let me get some opinion from you on this.
Yeah, I mean, the Green Party believes in using taxes to get what we want society to be doing. For example, if you cut the things that you want to encourage, you cut taxes on those. We want to encourage people working. We want to encourage you to make more income. And then you put a small fee on the things we don't want, such as waste.
You mentioned the Samsung deal earlier in your comments. I was unclear whether or not you thought it was a good idea or a bad idea.
I do think it's a good idea. That's the thing. Like, I'm not just going to bash it because it's a different party than me. I think that's great. We should have more investment in the province. We should definitely have investment in green technology. I'm not going to bash that at all. I just think we can build upon that. And it's an example of what is good, and it's exactly an example of what the future is. It's the 21st century economy. Let's build upon that. Let's not just throw money at whatever old business needs it. Let's look at the kind of society we want and invest in those kinds of things.
When you go door to door, all of you, are you still hearing a lot of concerns about health care? Is that still something that people bring up?
Actually, it's been astonishing this election. What I hear most at the doors, don't let them close the public libraries. Don't let them cut TTC service. They are really horrified what they're reading at City Hall.
Those are city things.
And,
You're not,
But that's what they're coming with me at. They're really worried about this.
They see a politician and want to complain, right?
And they don't know federal, provincial. They see me and they say, Mike, don't let them close my libraries. What are they going to do? My snow shoveling is going to be removed. So they're saying, please protect our public services. That's been the #1 issue.
And not healthcare. You're not hearing that healthcare issues are
in past years.
Even though the costs are going up, the outgoing president of the Canadian Medical Association had this indictment of the entire Medicare system right across the country, saying it was a massive confusion and didn't know where it was going and is not heading in the right direction. And you're not hearing
it's
it
the
at the
front
door?
page of the paper every day, every newscast. The marathon meetings at City Hall. All they hear about is maybe they're going to lose their recreation program, they're going to lose the snow removal.
Yeah.
They are really worried about cuts. That's what they're talking
well,
about.
all right, but that's, that's
what
out of your
they're telling me.
bailiwick. Who wants to talk about health care? Let me see your hands.
I'd like to talk
Okay,
about
all right, well,
healthcare.
let's go to Gordon.
I don't know how you haven't heard people talking about healthcare, because first of all, it's the single most important issue as identified by recent polls in Ontario, and so it's in our riding. They have problems with a 12-hour waiting room in emergency rooms. That's actually a problem that I've identified. They have problems with waiting. We have 10,000 people waiting.
But we know
for
all
home
that.
care.
What would you do to change some of that?
We need an investment.
We know what the problem is.
Exactly. We need upfront investments. We need frontline investments to take care of that. What we're proposing is that we're going to cut the waiting time for the emergency rooms in half. In the past year, what we've seen 2,000 nurses actually out of the healthcare system. That's what's happened. We're prepared to bring that back, to redo some of the damage that's happened to the healthcare systems. Actually, and as we talked about, you brought before the corporate tax, I think we should stop this madness. I don't think that doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for different results, actually that's the definition of insanity, as Einstein says. So how about we focus on what's important to people, and how about we focus on what really brings results?
And use some of that revenue that you would recapture from corporations to do that.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. Josh Rackless, do you want to talk about health care?
Sure.
Okay. I'm not trying to talk you into anything.
No, yeah,
I think,
part of the reason you might not be hearing about it is because, if people really care about healthcare, they're probably in the hospital, and now it's a big issue. It's like, well,
I don't think so. I think you don't have to be in a hospital to care about healthcare.
No, but I think that might also be a sign that, we're not doing too bad with healthcare. Not to, compliment the Liberals too much, but if people aren't complaining about it, if people are just saying, well, my taxes are too high, that might be a kind of a sign that, well, healthcare is not in that bad shape. But the Green Party does believe that we can always do better. Their focus, as I've touched upon in my introduction, is on illness prevention. If we can make people healthier, less likely to get sick, $1 spent on that is worth many times the money you'd have to spend to actually take care of someone when they're sick. So, and caring for the environment is another way that we can prevent people from getting sick. And at the same time, we'd encourage more use of sort of community hubs where your doctor will work in a team with other healthcare providers, and that way you'll get more efficient, a more cost-efficient and more timely care rather than just everything being
Since
divided.
we can't seem to find family doctors for everybody.
Exactly, and so this is a way that we can
All right.
provide more care to more people.
Rocco Rossi, do you want to talk about healthcare?
Absolutely.
All right,
Because
well,
I hear
carry
it.
on.
I hear it at the door every day, and as someone who spent
Well, are you
4.5
prompting it, or are you just
No.
hearing
That's
it?
coming from people because and as someone who was CEO of the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Ontario for 4.5 years, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. As we age as a population, whether it's ourselves, we may not be in the hospital, but our parents are, or a relative is, or we know of someone, and it also happens to be almost half of the entire provincial budget. So it is a crucial issue to look at. And let's look at the precise recommendations that we're making. One is obviously on the preventative side, and again, as someone who came from heart and stroke, I'm an enormous believer in that. Two, though, is we want to encourage people to keep their parents at home for as long as possible. So we want to double the tax credit for home caregivers. That will help families, cover that burden and keep people out of long-term care in hospitals. So that's step number one. Step number two is actually
Well, no,
to
I hope this
increase-
isn't a list that goes on
no,
20
it's just
minutes.
3.
Okay, all right.
Step number 2
Okay.
is increase long-term care by 40,000 beds. Step number 3, eliminate the LHINs. We've wasted $300 million, the Liberal government, $300 million on a layer of bureaucracy that doesn't see a single patient, doesn't perform a single operation, and that money needs to go into frontline care. It needs to go into long-term beds, needs to go into doctors, nurses. That's how we're going to approach the system.
Okay. Michael, let's come back to you with some of the things your party's going to do about healthcare.
Well, basically, our party has been very clear in saying that we believe in public health care that is universal and innovative. And that's why we've invested in new family health teams where you have nurse practitioners, doctors working as a team. We've opened one up just on Eglinton recently. They're opening up all over the province. We've got 1.3 million more Ontarians that have a family doctor than they did 8 years ago. We're helping seniors with a renovation tax grant so they can stay in their home longer, $1,500. And we've got this innovative program that came out of Dr. Mark, who's from Sprint, where we're going to introduce house calls, an old-fashioned idea that's going to save money rather than a senior having to go to hospital and get an appointment. We're going to have doctors come to the home and see that frail and elderly senior.
How much money are you spending on that?
Well,
for example?
we'll probably save a lot more money than we'll spend
Well, what are you
because
spending?
in emergency time, they won't be going sitting in
Yeah.
emergency. The doctor, in fact, the pilot project out of Sprint in North Toronto has proven that you can save money, and that's why we're adopting it across the province.
But I heard from the health minister the amount of money is about $30 million, right?
Yeah, to get the program started. But in
yeah.
the long run, there are savings in having these doctors' house calls. And the other thing that really works well in my community, Dale, I've got these amazing centers called community health centers. I've got the Unison Health Center in Lawrence Heights and the Ann Johnson Health Center on Yonge Street, where you have dental work, you have nurse practitioners, you have hygienists, you have nutritionists in the community hub where people can go without an appointment and they don't have to go to a hospital, and that is a very effective
Okay.
investment we have. Community health centers.
All right, here's some health-related questions here. I better get them on as well. Here's Arena calling from the riding. Arena, what is your question for the candidates?
Hi, I heard that some of the candidates mentioned that they're going to distribute their money accordingly to doctors, but as well as frontline staff. But the truth is that CEOs are actually making like six-figure salaries, while this frontline staff are actually being cut. They're being fired. How do you, I don't understand, how do you justify this unfair treatment of our workers?
Okay. When you put the CEO's salary next to somebody on the front line of healthcare, what would you say to that, Gertie?
Right. We'd like to put a stop to that. We believe that that money is much better invested in frontline.
But you still got to pay a
services.
good buck to get a
Of
CEO,
course,
don't you?
of course, but not millions and millions of dollars. Actually, if we just stop the increases and the bonuses, that accounts to $80 million just for the CEOs of public run businesses. So that's $80 million that could put it to better use.
Public-run businesses.
Yes.
Beyond healthcare, you mean?
No, public-run entities like hospitals.
Yeah, but including other public entities as well.
Yes,
beyond
that's including
healthcare.
other entities,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Public corporations. Let's
All right,
call them that
okay.
way.
Josh Rackless, what would you say to that disparity between?
Well, I mean,
two.
it sounds to me like you've got some CEOs that are, they're being probably very well paid because they're in charge of a lot of people, huge bureaucracy. The Green Party believes in bringing it back down to communities, having smaller organizations that can respond more nimbly and more efficiently to the needs of their people. So, you get people on the ground, and like we were talking about, little community health groups where people are working together, and you can get to know them, and you can get the treatment you need more efficiently. So yeah, I mean, we'd have to look at, do we need these CEOs that are running these giant health networks that maybe aren't even responding to the needs of people?
Well, certainly it's annoying to a lot of people, the disparity, in what somebody takes home in their paycheck between the CEO and the frontline healthcare workers. How should that be addressed, Michael?
Well, it's obviously a sore point, and I agree that many of them are paid too much at some of the salaries I've seen. I also know, like I've got a CEO at Baycrest Hospital, Dr. Bill Reichman.
Yes.
Every cent that he's paid is worth it. I mean, he is an incredible innovator. He's attracting the best scientists from all over the world to come to Baycrest. So, we brought him in from Princeton in the States. And so, you can't judge them all, but some of them are obviously overpaid. But Dr. Bill Reichman at Baycrest, whatever he's making, he's worth it.
Okay.
My grandmother lives at Baycrest, so keep that guy.
Okay, keep that guy. All right, okay. We'll make a list later,
Okay,
I guess.
put
I
them on the list.
don't know.
Yeah, so
Rocco
just start
Rossi, what
assessing
about
them.
this whole situation?
Look, the Liberals have had 8 years in government. If Mike Cole is aware of those who are overpaid, he should be pointing them out. The Liberal government should be pointing it out. Instead, they've been growing the bureaucracy. They've introduced these LHINs with high-priced people who are not seeing patients, who are not providing surgeries. $300 million. They've tripled the number of people making over $100,000 in the greater government bureaucracy. So if there was supposed to be control, you've had 8 years. You had a choice, sir. You didn't do anything about it. That's part of the reason this government's got to go.
So is your question really, what are those people at LHIN, at the various LHINs doing?
What are they doing? We know exactly what they're doing. Whenever this government has a bad news announcement around healthcare, it has the LHINs announce it. Anytime there's something good to announce, they have their own MPPs go out and announce it. The LHINs are there strictly as a political buffer to try to make this government look
Okay,
good. They are not providing a service.
Let's hear the counter argument to
Well,
that, Mike Cole.
I mean, Mr. Rossi and the Tories are great at talking about these regional decision-making bodies we have, because we don't believe that all the decisions should be made at Queen's Park. For Thunder Bay, Cornwall, I think there's got to be local decisions made about healthcare delivery. And when the Conservatives were in power last, they made all the decisions in some basement at Queen's Park. And I remember in the middle of the night, 1997, they
Why was
closed.
it a basement?
Yeah,
We don't want to talk
we
about
couldn't
that.
find them. 28 hospitals were closed by the Tory health bosses at Queen's Park. No consultation with the local hospitals. We lost Northwestern Hospital, Branson Hospital, Doctors Hospital, Wellesley Hospital. They made that decision centrally at Queen's Park. We think it's important to have decisions about your health care made locally. This is a huge province. And I think if you centralize health delivery, you're going to basically make mistakes, and you're going to have bureaucrats inside the government.
But the government still has to maintain some control over those LHINs,
Well, we do.
most assuredly.
Yeah, the Ministry of Health
And you
does.
appoint the people who
Yeah.
sit on the boards, right?
And they work together with the Ministry of Health, but the decisions about delivery locally
Are best
have
made
input.
by the... Okay.
The input comes from the regions.
All right. Gertie, what do you think about these LHINs?
Well, we believe that local targeted healthcare service is very important, but the LHINs as organizations themselves, we have multiple reports that prove that they're inefficient, that prove that the CEOs of the LHINs and these structures take about $26 billion from the government, and they pay little to no accountability for that money because the structure has been set up this way. And we believe that this structure doesn't work.
So it's a good idea if it were fixed, is that what you're saying?
No, we should have targeted healthcare.
Yeah.
But the LHIN structure right now, it doesn't work.
All right. But what I'm saying is you would fix it or just get rid of it?
I think we'll probably get rid of it as it is.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it as it is, and come up with
Maybe
an
come
idea
back with something
to
else.
provide something which we can hold accountable to the government.
Josh Rackless, what do you think?
I think this whole discussion is just evidence that we need a green perspective in Parliament because, you know, people are panicking. How do we manage all the people who are sick? How do we deal with this huge bureaucracy? If we focus more on the green ideals of clean water, clean air, walkable communities, healthy foods, locally grown foods, organic foods, we'd have a lot fewer people sick, and it wouldn't be as big an issue.
Well, maybe at some time in the rosy future that would be true, right?
Well, when I'm elected, then...
Oh, I see. Okay. But the overarching healthcare issue, I think, is, and one of you mentioned it, almost half of every program dollar in Ontario is spent on healthcare. And when you watch those 6% increases that have been going along up till now, you say, oh, well, how long will it be before we bankrupt ourselves as a province or the feds get bankrupted trying to put their share into Medicare across the country?
Well,
That's the big question, isn't it, Michael?
Well, we need the feds to step up to the plate. At one time, you know, the feds used to basically share 50% of healthcare, and that doesn't matter which party was there. Now they only contribute about 20%.
It's about 20, 25%?
Yeah, 20%.
Yeah.
And now that's why Premier McGuinty has said he wants an agreement, a 10-year agreement with the federal government in paying their full share of healthcare in Ontario and not diminishing share, which they have been. So we need that kind of partnership for, you know, to deal with this reality. And it's not just the aging population, it's just the nature of healthcare is becoming so sophisticated and so complex that's making it more costly.
But isn't the simple fact, isn't it the simple fact that you are going to, that Ontario is going to have to make some cuts in healthcare in these coming years in order to survive, in order to be able to, well, for one thing, whittle down the deficit, which you've all undertaken to do within a relatively short period of time. I know you've got spending plans, you can see them in your platforms, but at the same time, won't other things have to be cut? And if so, what?
Well, I think you better ask the Conservatives that because they got a $14 billion series of cuts they're not talking about.
All right, I'm just talking about healthcare.
The critical thing is that every Western country is going through the same dilemma.
Indeed.
Everyone is. The United States, Great Britain, all. What we've been told by the experts like the Romanov Commission and everybody is that you have to basically get away from just relying on traditional healthcare as we know it, as the hospital, the emergency, the prescription of pharmaceuticals at a moment's notice. We need to get into like the family health teams, the locally based community health centers. We need to have these doctors' house calls. In other words, people shouldn't always be required to get their health care at a hospital.
But that means other things would be cut to pay for some of that.
Not necessarily, because you save the money by not having people line up.
But you don't save it right away. You might save it down the road.
Well, you do, but in the long run, that's where the major savings are going to be, by decentralizing healthcare and have people stay at home and in their community health centers.
What about the bigger issue? Healthcare is going up. The day will come, if nothing happens, we will bankrupt ourselves.
Here's the key issue, Dale. You're absolutely right. The pace of growth has to slow. What we've committed to in Changebook, and I encourage everyone to go and read it, it's available at changebook.ca, is that by the fourth year we'll have increased investment in the healthcare system by $6.1 billion. What that means is that healthcare will have grown by 3% a year for the 4 years, instead of the 6+ that it's been growing at under the McGuinty government. But we've been clear in Changebook as well to say we're going to put the $6 billion more in healthcare. We're going to put an additional $2 billion in education. Every other department from the balance, we're going to get 2% per year for the 4 years of efficiencies. That's how we pay for it, and we've been clear. Now the Liberals, in Forward Together, in their platform book, bury in page 56 of 58 pages, they say they will cut 5% of the civil service, 5% of all government workers. So they need to come clean about where those 5%. We've been clear We've said we're going to increase in healthcare and education. We need 2% per year over the 4 years in the balance of the operation to make it work. They need to come clean. And Mr. Santa Claus over here keeps saying he's going to add more, and it's only the conservatives that are making tough choices. Well, that's baloney, because in black and white on page 56 they say 5%. Who are they?
Where does it say in the change book that jobs are going to be cut?
2% per year in the areas outside of healthcare and education.
So is that an undertaking that no jobs would be cut in healthcare? You're not saying that.
We are saying that the savings that we're going to get, the efficiencies, the reduced costs, we are going to net increase the investment in both healthcare and education between now and the end of the 4 years.
All right, I'll come back to Mike Cole, then I'll give you both an opportunity to talk about this as well.
Well, we've heard this story before, Dale. I remember Mike Harris said, we're going to cut your taxes, we're going to find efficiencies, and there'll be no cut in services. He gets elected. What do we find? Downloading of taxes on the City of Toronto. 28 hospitals closed, 11,000 nurses or 6,000 nurses fired. What they're not telling you, and the National Post, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star all agree, the Conservatives have a $14 billion gap in their platform, and that's going to be $14 billion of cuts that'll be primarily in the two largest areas. You've got to cut in healthcare and education. That's where they will cut, like they did before. So I just tell people, don't believe the story that you heard before.
But what about this thing Rocco Rossi's talking about where 5%?
Page 56.
Well,
on page 56.
He picks these things out all the time.
But if it says it, it must be
The thing that
be true.
I actually read your platform.
Okay, all right.
Okay, sorry for the interruption, Mr. Rossi, but the thing is that we just say, look at the story of the Conservatives. They always claim they're going to basically balance the books, no tax increases, and leave your service. Then they get into power, and they're going, and it's in their platform. $14 billion they haven't accounted for.
Okay, all right, we'll get to that. But I want to hear as well from the other two candidates. Gertie, you first.
You hit right on, and there is no strategy. Right now, we've entered an unsustainability curve in terms of healthcare. If we continue this way, in 2020, we'll have 73% or so of our budget being spent on healthcare. So you can imagine what's going to be left for the rest of the programs. But there is no innovation right now. We have the government has a pay-as-you-go program type of thing in healthcare without an actual strategy on how we're going to make this a sustainable, so it's a public healthcare that can provide the quality services to people that need them most. Here's what that 5% is coming from. It's a cut all across the line. It doesn't matter what the benefit added is of those people that you're cutting. They've cut ambulance dispatchers just as like as secretaries. That's what those cuts were. They've cut the modernization project where I was working at the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, which provided over $20 million in savings in 1 year's worth of work for 4 people working in it. And instead of letting us continue it, the modernization project was chopped off. So there is no strategy, there's no will to do things better in healthcare, and that's why we've entered this unsustainability curve.
Josh Rackless, what would you like to add to this conversation at this point?
I mean, clearly none of us are doctors or experts in healthcare necessarily.
No, but you're still the people who are being called upon to plot strategy and come up with solutions.
So I talked to my cousin Michael Rackless, who's a doctor and a well-known health expert. He's written many books on it. And he's like, I'm busy right now, but here. He sends me a 50-page PowerPoint presentation. Read this. And it covered the same issues. And basically, his opinion was like, listen, there's this fear-mongering, oh my God, we're going to go bankrupt. It's not that bad. First of all, the healthcare the percentage of our budget, it's gone up because the economy has gone down. So it isn't going up as much as it is. It's just naturally a larger percentage now. Also, it's not going up at a rate that's going to bankrupt us. The baby boomers are healthier. People aren't getting as sick as much as they were. So it's not as big an emergency as a lot of people are saying. And at the same time, he's saying, what the Green Party is saying, it's about community resources, about being more efficient, having teams of people so that you're not in emergency. If you've got a sprained ankle, you go to your nurse practitioner, whatever it is. It's about being more efficient that way. And at the same time, the Green Party believes the idea behind eHealth was right. Obviously, the execution didn't work out that well. Part of the problem was that we tried to create our own made in Ontario system. And what we should be doing is sort of looking at countries that have a system already that works pretty well, and we can adopt that. We save time, we save money, and we get our records working more efficiently. I can't remember the last time I got immunized or whatever, and I keep going to I'm like, oh, I don't know, and there's no way to figure it out, so I get it done again.
Well, they would have to look through a paper file and spend
Exactly,
half a day
but I go
looking
to
for it.
different walk-in clinics, and I can't remember which one I went to 2 years ago, so if there was a computer file, call up in the smartphone, there it is, you've saved money.
Yeah.
So it's just about being smarter
Okay.
with our money.
Can I shift the focus a bit for you, Rocco Rossi? Sure. This $14 billion thing has come up a number of times. It's come up with a number of candidates. I'd like to hear your take on it. Essentially, you're saying, if I can paraphrase it briefly, there's $14 billion in promises for which you don't know where the money's going to come from. Is that what you're saying? Over to you.
Here it is. The only $14 billion hole in this election is the $14 billion deficit that this government has left Ontario with this year, and they plan to grow it to $16 billion next year.
It's amazing how those two numbers are the same.
Because that's the only hole. Martin Reg Cohn in the Toronto Star, not exactly the greatest friend of the Progressive Conservative Party, this past week wrote a column, and I encourage people to Google it and look right in the Star, where he says Liberal staffers have not been able to justify this $14 billion claim. It is a complete stretch. So I don't know.
Well, what's the real number then?
Yeah, the real number is that this plan, changebook.ca, is fully costed. We're talking about the choices that have to be made.
All the parties are saying that. Every time candidates come in here, everything's fully
100%, but
costed.
we've come clean on the choices, and the Liberals simply are not. They try to bury on page 56 of 58 pages that they're going to do a 5% cut. They also have been talking about public sector salary freezes, and yet we all know that in the back rooms, Mr. McGuinty cut a separate deal with OPSEU, where post-October they get a wage increase when he's trying to tell everybody else that it's frozen. This is a guy who cannot control costs. It will only lead to higher
turn around
taxes.
and say, even if you account for what the Liberals are calling your $14 billion hole in spending, can you undertake to say, oh, well, there'll be no cuts if the Conservatives form the government for the next 4 years?
We have said
no cuts.
There will be 2% outside of healthcare and education each year for the next 4 years.
But not a job would be cut in healthcare. Is that what you're saying? Not a job.
We will invest by the end of the fourth year. We will have $6.1 billion more, which is precisely
that's not what
the
I'm
number.
asking.
It's precisely the number. It's precisely the same number that the Liberals are offering in their book.
Well,
It's a
we've had,
3% increase.
To which you would say?
We've had independent economists look at our platform. We are the most modest in terms of what we're promising. The Tories have basically said, we are going to maintain services, spend as much as the Liberals, yet we're also going to give billions in tax cuts and all these other promises they're making in their platform. They haven't accounted for it. It's been a blatant gap that we've never seen before. During elections, platforms come out. But this Tory platform is a joke.
Voters out there have seen a lot of platforms over a lot of years.
This is the biggest joke ever.
Oh, well, okay. Gertie, let's come back to you.
I don't think we should cut anybody out of the healthcare system. I think we have a lot of work to do. And with so much work to do, I think we can put people to better use. We can achieve efficiencies by actually using these people better. Mm-hmm. It's not about a choice, cut or service. I think it is very possible. I have demonstrated in my work as the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, that it is very possible to do more with the same budgets that we have. Let's first achieve that efficiency, make things run more efficiently.
You're talking about the things that Dr. Jeff Turnbull brought up, the CMA president, who said, really, the part of the solution lies in reorganization, getting the right people in the right jobs. It's a muddle. The improperly motivated people are in the wrong jobs, and a whole list of things beyond money.
Right. Let's use people more efficient. That's what good management is about, right?
Well,
let's get the people,
let me go to Josh. I'll come back to you.
Where they're more
Josh?
efficient.
I mean, I can jump in and say all the same things, right? But I think as the Green Party member, I'd just like to say, hey, let's let's remember that our goal as a province should be to prevent people from getting sick in the first place. If we get rid of coal power, suddenly you have less people having asthma problems, winding up in the hospital, you save money. I mean, I think that's really what we should be focusing on. How can we cause people to get less sick, and then we'll save money in the healthcare system that way rather than discussing.
People are still going to get sick no matter how healthy
Absolutely,
they are.
but the
aren't
less
they?
people who get sick, the more money you have
Yeah.
to take care of them.
Okay, back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I know it's especially in their DNA of the Conservatives to bash healthcare in Ontario, but we have some of the finest hospitals,
I didn't
like
hear
in
them bash
Toronto.
healthcare. Yeah.
We've got, whether it's Sunnybrook, Mount Sinai, St. Mike's. We've got the new William Osler Hospital we built. We built 18 new hospitals in the last 8 years. We're building another one at Keelan Wilson. We're providing these new family health teams, nurse practitioners. We're immunizing for 28 diseases now. We used to immunize for 2. We've got an amazing, talented group of people working in the healthcare system, doctors, nurses, technicians. These people provide, I think, one of the best healthcare systems in North America. And sure, there are efficiencies and there's improvements in a system that basically treats 13 million plus Ontarians can walk in the door anytime.
Okay.
So
All right,
it's a pretty good system, despite
let's
its
park
faults.
this for a few minutes and see if we can't get on with a few other things. We've mentioned it briefly here and there, and that's the deficit in Ontario. Various parties have various target dates for coming up with a balanced budget. As I recall, the Conservatives and Liberals are pretty close, and
Pretty close.
and the New Democrats, and particularly the Green Party, are kind of out in front of that. But I'd just like to ask a general question about how important that, with all the other priorities, all the other things we have to do, keep the economy afloat, do this, do that, find more jobs, preserve health care, make sure education is working the way it should, put more money into it if you can find it. How important is it to whittle down that deficit in the number of years that it's being promised it will be whittled down in?
I think it's extremely important. I'll take this question
Okay.
first. I think it's extremely important because what happens? In the past 8 years, we've seen the debt double in the province of Ontario, and we've seen also an increase in taxes at the same time. Actually, this is quite a bit of a burden for the people of Ontario, because what happens, even now that we have record low interest rates, we pay about $10 billion to just in interest alone for our debt, which means that $10 billion that could have gone into services or needs that people have in the province of Ontario. So I think it's extremely important for us to actually get a grasp on that debt situation that
Then
we have.
move on from there and tell me how you're going to do it.
Okay, like I said, first we have to look at what is our spending been in the past. We have about $6 billion that we have in corporate tax cuts that have not brought any real results to us. The same problem is with our friends in the United States in the South. I think we should actually roll those back. That's $6 billion that we can use towards paying down debt.
Well, that's
or to
part of
better
it,
things.
yeah.
Exactly.
So that would be the major thrust for the New
But this
Democrats
also
to do.
stop waste like e-health, which is $1 billion.
Yeah.
Stop these smart meters, which cost another $1 billion. These are billions and billions of dollars that if you add them up, they actually are quite sizable.
After a while, you start talking about some serious money, don't you? Huh? Yeah, all right. Okay. Mike Cole, what about the deficit and the priority it should have with any government?
Well, I'm surprised that the NDP is now talking about taking these heavy measures on debt and deficit, where every time they're in the legislature, they're asking us to spend more. So I really find it a contradiction here. But the thing is that in 2008, we had an economic meltdown here, where the government of Ontario had to make a decision. Do we basically do what they did in the States and lay off thousands of people in healthcare and education, because that's the primary areas? Do we let General Motors and Chrysler basically collapse with the $400,000 jobs? We said we weren't going to inflict that kind of punishment on people because it would also be detrimental to the economy, because it would slow down and really add fire to the add gasoline to the flames of the
Don't
economy.
lose sight of the question I asked, okay?
Yeah, but that's
All right.
so that's how we got into the deficit, because
Yeah.
we made those investments to keep our healthcare and education.
Having been there
Yeah.
now, how are we?
Now, what we've got to do is continue to grow the economy, expand the economy, and the Ontario economy is resilient enough to get through this, but it's not going to be done overnight. Because if you do it
So you
overnight,
can whittle the debt through growth? I mean,
that's
certainly
part of it. That's part of it. And then the other part of it is through innovation, through efficiencies. But you can't whittle it on healthcare and education, because if you do that, the consequences are going to be really felt amongst people who can least afford it.
Josh Ratcliffe, your thoughts on this deficit and how we wrestle it to the ground, get rid of
Well,
it?
it's an interesting point because a lot of people just assume the Green Party is about the environment, about being sustainable environmentally, but just as much we're about being sustainable financially.
Yes.
So we're pretty proud of our deficit reduction plan, which will have it down to zero by 2015, and by 2018 we'll be saving Ontarians $2,200.
So you're way
a year.
ahead
Yeah, I mean,
in your prediction. Mm-hmm. All right.
so because, you know, it's funny. Last night I started to go through my credit cards. Go, okay, which credit card do I have to pay off first? Which is charging me the most interest? And it suddenly dawned on me that's why I'm green, right? It's the same with government. You pay off. It's not just about throwing money. You know, oh, we got to get rid of this evil deficit. It's as much money as you're paying for interest as money that you could be investing in the environment and healthcare, right? So get rid of that so that we can. We're not giving debt to our children and wasting money on interest.
Okay. I've only got a couple of minutes left, and I think people, when they're assessing you,
I didn't get to respond on the deficit.
on the deficit, did I not get? All right, quickly on the deficit. Sorry about that, Rocco.
I mean, quickly, it is critical, and the Liberals simply aren't credible on bringing costs down. They've never, ever shown in these 8 years that they can reduce costs. They've increased the size of government by 80% over the last 8 years at a time when the economy grew by 10%. You're not going to make it up in volume in terms of the economy growing. They know that themselves. That's why, in order to get the economists to tick off their platform, they had to add on page 56 that they're going to cut 5%. They had to add that they're going to do.
Well, isn't that
public
exactly
salary-
what the Progressive Conservatives are going to have to do too?
But we have at least said, outside of healthcare and education, we will do 2% a year in all of the other
it
departments.
doesn't add up.
We've been absolutely clear. Whereas my colleague is now saying it's all going to be done through growth. I don't believe in trickle
So
down.
jobs will be
et
cut,
cetera.
but not in the protected areas. That's
Not
what
in
we're
the
saying.
not in the protected areas.
will
And
be cut
you're going to take. We're going to get rid of the LHINs. We're going to eliminate the OPA. There are 560 different agencies, boards, and commissions,
Doesn't
many
add
of
up.
which do not serve any good purpose. You've had a tripling of the number of civil servants making over $100,000 a year. You had $1 billion plus blown on e-health, and then after that,
Well, don't
that
forget your
government
own
had-
party's role in that. I
After
mean, I
that,
don't
the
think you
government
should-
this government had the audacity to give merit pay increases and bonuses to the e-health staff, and then after a public outcry, they pulled it back. But now they're being taken to court by these same
the
workers because they
bonuses, yeah.
haven't
Okay.
managed it properly.
Quickly, I'm
I'll
almost
just
out
say
of time here,
quickly on
Michael.
e-health,
30 seconds.
$800 million was spent by his conservative friends. And the second thing is that the conservatives say they're just going to cut in other areas than health and education. Well, it doesn't add up because those ministries are so small. The efficiencies you make there aren't going to basically add
Pay
up
for it.
in their platform.
All right, is that what
You know,
all right,
so
okay.
they're
All right.
the same old
I gotta-
story.
Time, gentlemen, I'm sorry. Never enough time. 30 seconds now from each of you in summation, and I'll start with Rocco Rossi.
Thank you very much. It would be my absolute honor to be your representative in Eglinton Lawrence. This election is about change. We have a very clear choice. We can have 4 more years of higher taxes, greater inefficiency, more waste, or you can have a government under Tim Hudak that's going to bring you some tax relief, that's going to ensure we get value for money so we have money for the things that we value, principally education and healthcare. And with that, Ontario will retake the place it rightfully deserves.
Thank you very much. Josh Ratcliffe, your final thoughts.
I'm just going to tell you how I live my own life. I take care of my health, I exercise, I save money, and I save the environment by using energy-efficient light bulbs. I care about people. I pick up litter everywhere I go. If you want me doing that on a macro scale and taking care of the province in the same kind of OCD way, you'll all benefit from it. So vote for Green.
All right, thank you very much. Gertie Dervishi, your final thoughts, please.
Thank you. I just want to, in October 6th, vote for fresh politics, vote for fresh mind and fresh ways to tackle issues that are important to you. vote for the NDP and change that puts people first. I think when you go vote, think of yourself, your friends, and your neighbors, so we can keep the services, create the jobs, and preserve the way of life that is so important to us, so we can build a province that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Mike Cole, your final thoughts.
I'm very proud to live in my riding. I'm very proud to represent the people of my riding. And just to say that the future of this province and the cities at stake in this election, because if you elect Tim Hudak and his hokey plan, the same kind of cuts that you're seeing in the City of Toronto and libraries and TTC, you're going to see tenfold. So we need a balance. We can't have a Conservative government in Ottawa, Conservative government at City Hall, Conservative government at Queen's Park. We need checks and balances. And with McGuinty government, we've got those checks and balances that will invest in public health care, public education, and public transit.
Okay. How goes the campaign, all of you? Having a good time?
Fantastic.
Really? Yeah?
Good, yeah.
Did you have a good time for the last hour?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
fine.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay.
Getting better all the time.
Well, campaigning is a special kind of work, isn't it? I mean, good
Well, if
grief.
you don't love people
It's an
and
amazing
you don't want to be out there, then this is the wrong gig.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So this is the fun part, is actually going to the door and talking to people about their dreams, about their hopes.
I had a
and-
cabinet minister here the other night. He said, it's great. I don't have to deal with the cabinet stuff. I can just go out and talk to people.
Yeah, real people. And
Yeah.
and you know what it is 99% of the people are just wonderful. You always get one or two
Yeah.
people, but that's
I'd be
fantastic.
grouchy if you came to my door.
Yeah, I know.
I'd be grouchy to
at
all
9
of
in the
you.
morning. So anyways, people are great.
Thank you all
you.
very much. Good
Thank you
luck
very
to you
much.
all. Thanks
Great
for coming
pleasure.
in.
Thanks, Dale.
On the next local campaign, Don Valley East and Don Valley West. So join us tomorrow night for those ridings. Bye for now.